Welcome to Superhero Pow. I'm your host nerd, Tom Fremgen. Today I thought I'd share a crazy little story with you about how I almost bought a comic book store. You see, where I currently reside, in the West Valley of Los Angeles, there are 7 comic book stores and an 8th one that only sells back issues. That's crazy. I've moved around a bit in my life and I've never seen so many comic book stores so close to each other. When I was in college at the University of Illinois, they had 3 of them, but one was dying and it shut down before I graduated. So this is insane. Talking to the owner of one of them, he believes this is because of the entertainment industry. With such a high concentration of people who work in and around Hollywood, the West Valley just has more people interested in comic books and related material than probably anywhere else in the world. Then, one day, my wife discovers that one of them, the flip side, one that I had never been to, was for sale. She found out by scrolling through a website of businesses in the area that are for sale, and, well, it'd be crazy not to check it out, right? So the next weekend, we drove over with our 2 small boys. As you can see from these pictures, the place was quite a mess. I hadn't seen a comic book store like this since the 80s. Now, comic book stores are all kind of bright and shiny. Speaking with the current owner, Dirth, the store had been at this location for about 20 years or so. Before then, it had 2 other locations. And it was called the Flip Side because they sold records and comic books. He was the record guy, and his partner, who passed away a few years ago, was the comic guy. And as you can see, it's pretty much just a pop culture dump site, especially the back rooms. Customers said they loved coming here because they never knew what they were going to find. But now, Dirth was tired of it and looking to retire. He was asking $400,000 for it, 9 years ago. You see, Dirth basically punched out quite a while ago, and the business was falling apart. He was only open about 20 hours a week and barely bought any new stock. When DC stopped using Diamond to distribute their comics, he didn't feel like signing up with the new distributors. So for more than 5 years, the place had lost money every month. You could barely call the place a business anymore. So his asking price dipped to $350,000. I understand he only had 1 serious buyer in 9 years, and they backed out because they just didn't think it was worth it. And now, here I come. Speaking to his agent, a woman managing the sale of the business, Dirth felt he had $1 million worth of inventory, of course which he had no record of anything in the store. So job 1 of any new owner would be to inventory the whole place, while cleaning it. So for a few weeks I crawled all over the store, trying to see what was all in there. Just look at this stuff. Boxes of comics everywhere, tons of records, not to mention CDs and random toys. Here are some Toy Biz X-Men dolls, Superman the Animated Series, Star Trek Next Generation, and a bunch of open figures. He had a wall of movie posters, a whole bathroom full of Playboy magazines. Insert your own joke here. But no, seriously, there were a ton of Playboys in this place, though none of them were really worth more than $2. There was a wall of VHS tapes and paperback books. He told me a lot of times people would just give him stuff because they didn't have the heart to throw it away. So he'd take it and then he'd throw it away. But if he thought it was nice, he'd put it on the shelf. Here he had a bunch of Disney pins and even did some trading. Oh, and over by his records, he even had some laser discs. Look at this old anime one. I was thinking of giving it to a friend of mine who actually still has a laserdisc player. There were a couple of boxes of movie press stuff and stills and general memorabilia everywhere. Even some cardboard displays for sale. The space had 2 bathrooms, one of which was full of the Playboys, and the working bathroom had a bunch of unopened Diamond boxes, mostly Marvel Comics from the 90s. The back office was filled to the ceiling with any random toy, record, or memorabilia book you can imagine. It was just such a crazy, cool, big, and packed store. When I was finished, I did a very generous rounding up and figured he had about 200,000 records and 200,000 comic books. Most likely less, but when you added in all the other knickknacks in the store, about 400,000 items in total. And nothing really stood out as top quality. No superhero books from the 40s, no Karl Barks from the 50s, barely anything from the 60s, mostly 80s and 90s and 2000s, with a healthy 70s collection. With the records, well, I'm not really much of a record guy, but using eBay, I priced some of them and nothing really sold over $40, if even that. But the main question now was, would this stuff sell regularly enough to make a living off of it? Looking at the financial records for the past few years, it seemed like that answer was no. I mean, they sold, but not enough to pay rent and put food on the table. If there were some $1,000 gems in there, I certainly didn't see them. A few $100 items, but not real fast movers. It was going to take a while to find someone willing to spend $100 on whatever said item. So in a perfect world, I suppose, sure, maybe he had $1 million worth of inventory. But it was going to take a lot of time and a lot of money to sell it all. Now the first question. Do I want to do this? Luckily, before I was an artist/media guy, I worked a lot of retail. A lot of retail. So I knew what it takes to run a store. Buying this store would mean losing my weekends and really any time off for years. It was going to take a lot of work to fix this store and grow its customer base. No joke. And currently I was spending a lot of time watching my two small boys, taking them back and forth from school and whatnot. You can't work from home when you're running a retail store. So I'd probably have to start paying a whole lot more in childcare. Also, the possibility of moving out of the area was now out of the question. This store could/would be the anchor around my life. But let's be honest, sure looks like a hell of a lot of fun, doesn't it? There was a good-sized back room that I can turn into a room for my boys. They could watch TV, play video games, do homework, or whatever, and I'd just be a few yards away. And while I never liked the pay of retail sales, I did enjoy the job. There's something nice about locking the door and turning off the lights after a hard day of work. And I'd be playing with comic books all day, and talking to people who like comic books all day. And I was pretty sure all my media skills wouldn't go to waste, because then I'd be making videos about the store, and even using the store as a launching ground for my personal projects. So yeah, I did want this store. Okay, but could we improve the store? First, of course, would be cleaning the store up and putting everything into an inventory system. Moving beyond that, one thing I wanted to do to help with the sale of old comics was to put in a scanner system. You see, the prices would be in the computer. This way I could change the price of a comic very easily. Then the customer would use a scanner in the comic book aisle to see how much it is. Currently, Dirth was sitting up at the counter with a price guide. So the only way to know how much a comic book was worth was to go up to the counter and ask him. I tell you, the one single line at the counter was always painful and slow. With that out of the way, we also plan to open up the store a little bit more, basically shrinking the records and toy section. This would create room for gaming tables or even art classes. Since both my wife and I are artists, we figured this would be a great space to teach. And while we totally wanted to clean the place up, we did still want to keep some of the flea market charm of the store. And to that end, we were thinking of creating a scavenger hunt for kids. Give them a sheet of paper and see if they could search around the store while their parents were shopping and find certain characters on items. Find them all and get a simple prize. We were also thinking of creating a character corner. Every few months we would paint the walls with a character like Iron Man, Batman, Stormtrooper, or whatever and put them in an environment. This was to encourage people to come to the store and take their picture with said character and then post it online, i.e., free advertising. Finally, we wanted to draw attention to the store being open on Sundays. Traditionally speaking, comic book stores are very slow on Sundays. To kick things up, we thought we'd do a cosplay sale every Sunday. Come in costume and get like 10% off or whatever. Aside from being a good way to drum up business, we also thought it was nice to give cosplayers another place to come with their costumes. Anyway, those were our big plans, if you can call them big plans, to try and fix the store. All right, Tom, slow down. Before you jump in whole hog, you need to have an idea of what the monthly expenses are going to be, I say to myself. With no employees, currently the only thing being paid for was rent, license, and lights, which was around $6,000, which also included about $1,000 of new stock each month. And as I said, current sales weren't even meeting that requirement. And obviously those expenses were going to go up as soon as I added a point of sale system to inventory everything and scan price everything. And I also wanted insurance and a website and, oh yeah, an employee. Side note, yes, even starting out, I needed an employee. As I said, if I bought this store, I would need to spend more money on childcare. But I would still have to run out and be dad from time to time, so I would always need someone to watch the store while I was taking care of my parental responsibilities. Not to mention getting sick or even having to use the bathroom. So this was going to push operating costs up to about $10,000, not including the new stock. The new stock. If you want to run a store, you have to have new stock. Talking about new comic books, manga, games, toys, art supplies, whatever. Well, that number should be around $10,000 as well. You see, the rule of thumb is if I sold all my new stock every month, that would make me about $20,000, assuming a 50% markup. That would cover the cost of the new stock plus all my operating costs. So my overall cost is now $20,000. Honestly, that doesn't sound bad. But again, the fact was the store was currently only making $5,000 a month. So I had to quadruple the sales. And, this is important, this isn't even covering what I'm paying myself or any loan payments I have to make, all of which would then cause my new stock price to spike. Then, of course, I'd like to get a second employee, in case the first one gets sick, so this can very quickly get to something like $35,000. So I had to take the store from $5,000 a month in sales to $35,000 a month in sales. Can I do that? Now the second question. How much is this all going to cost? $350,000, you say. Well, I don't mind telling you, I don't have $350,000 just lying around to throw at an all but dead comic book store. Also, that would make this a leveraged buyout. Ever hear of that? That's when someone goes into heavy debt to buy a healthy company, which then means the healthy company is no longer a healthy company because it's in debt. Look at what happened to Toys R Us and Hostess Snack Cakes to see how leveraged buyouts can turn out. And here, I'm not even getting a healthy company. Not to mention it's surrounded by 7 competitors. But still, I'm interested. So I speak to some friends of mine who have MBAs, and they confirm what my gut reaction was. That I should give Dirth a nickel for the place, and he should thank me for not letting him lose any more money. Remember, Dirth had been losing money every month for over 5 years just keeping this place open. But I'm not going to do that. The stock was decent, so the real question was, what's a fair market price for all of it? As luck would have it, Chuck Rosansky, the king of back issues, owner of Mile High Comics, would help me out with that. But that'll have to wait for part 2. Hey, I gotta take a pee break. So you make sure you subscribe and notify so you won't miss part 2. Excelsior! Wait, can I say that?